Is it safe? Am I going to come out here and not get booed or hated or some other third thing for saying that there are bad copy abilities in Kirby games? Okay, well, here it goes. So, copy abilities in Kirby. There are a lot of really cool ones, but unfortunately some of them are bad and... Okay, come on. We can handle this like civilized civilians, right?
Okay.
You really mean it?
Sure, why not?
Yay! Well, if you're gonna be respectful of me, I'll be respectful of you as well. And preface all of this by saying, when I say bad copy ability, I'm just talking about speedrunning. Playing more efficiently than your standard casual playthrough, you know? For all of these abilities, there's nothing wrong with them. Heck, I really like most of them too. So trust me, I'm not trying to say that your favorite ability is bad, just... okay, that's actually exactly what I'm saying, but I've actually got nothing for this one, sorry. Kirby speedrunning is really, really cool. Obviously, I'd hope so. Look at my channel for 2 seconds. I think that's pretty immediate. I do my best to keep positive and focus on the really cool things, like glitches or ability-specific stuff. It's super fun, both talking about it and actually, you know, doing it, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In particular, when trying to be really good at anything, you realize before long that a small handful of your options for succeeding are really good, and most of the other stuff's just kinda stinky. Maybe they're really bad, maybe they're just comparatively bad, who knows? But if you've been looking at the footage and seeing the actual best abilities do their thing, you'll realize that, yeah, most abilities just can't keep up. But instead of actually focusing on bad abilities and being a pessimistic pup, I figured why not have a little fun and be a positive pup instead? Let's take a look at some abilities from over the years that struggle, let's say, and make them better. To make things interesting, I am also not going to look at making these the best ability in their respective run. Due to why, yes, getting an ability and blinking causes the run to finish. That would definitely make the ability better, but not in a fun way. Not unless it's Parasol, at least. We'll also be looking at more categories than just any percent. Variety is the spice of life. The pup of life, if you will. And again, to reiterate, repupperate, if you will, I'm just saying these are bad abilities for speedrunning. I've got nothing against you specifically, okay? Trust me, admitting that some of these are bad is gonna be tough for me too. And to start with, I'll prove it! Aside from the fact that it's amazing, and I love it, and it's the best, and it's my favorite, and it's awesome, and the best, and perfect, and cool, Parasol is... in Robobot. It's probably not Parasol at its worst. Adventure and Superstar definitely have it worse than this, if nothing else. But Robobot is a bigger bummer to me because it has a lot of viable abilities. Jet and Fire go crazy in the levels, Hammer and Ice destroy bosses, Cutter winds up being great for both. Other abilities find niches for things like being amazing in the true arena, even if they're not like Hammer and Ice, such as Doctor or UFO. They can maybe be used to solve some quick puzzles like Ninja, or they even have an insanely niche, yet also insanely overpowered ability to trivialize Kirby Clash, Beam in this case. Parasol, aside from one forced use of the Robobot armor, which is only used for a code cube and not for any of Parasol's specific traits, has nothing going for it. It's a real shame because its normal form does have a very good dash attack and some decent boss fights too. It just has far too many downsides, notably not being able to do anything useful in the air. Huge for Kirby speedruns, and there are not enough upsides to make up for that. When thinking about making Parasol better in Robobot specifically, I thought a lot about Cutter. In Robobot, Cutter isn't necessarily the best at anything, but it's so good at everything that actually matters to where it finds use during several different points of most, if not all, of Robobot's various speedruns. While I don't think Parasol can be as good as Cutter with only one simple change, in practice it would function a lot like Cutter if it was a bit better for these boss fights. But what does Parasol need aside from the boring stuff like a damage increase? If you've been looking at the footage, or really listening to me, like, come on now, you know it really struggles against bosses in the air. It does pretty well for itself against grounded bosses, scoring impressive times for fights like Mecha Knight Plus and the Triple Dedede fight. Unfortunately, it's harder to name bosses who stay grounded than the reverse. The Mecha Woods, Krako, the Sphere Doomers, Coily Rattlers, Susie, two of the mini-bosses, Mecha Knight, Altman, Dark Matter, Sectonia, and even more than just those stay in the air for Parasol to struggle against. Parasol Dive, your only real option in the air, is actually quite good, but setting it up is really slow. In Triple Deluxe, there was also canceling Parasol Drift repeatedly for, let's be honest here, hilarious results, but it's far too unreliable and Robobot to realistically use, at least without a task or something. Thus, I came up with the same solution that every single fan of Parasol ever thinks up: an anti-air attack. Parasol Pogo would involve Kirby bouncing off the parasol like a pogo stick and doing a twirl in the air, and maybe a cute little pose at the end, because, you know, we like to be silly around here. Anyway, this is important for 3 reasons. 1, it's cute, and despite it all, we have to stay on brand. What it all means in this case, I don't really know. I just make videos. Second, it solves the issue of Parasol having 0 options against aerial bosses. Sure, it's only one option, and realistically, the pogo bounce wouldn't go insanely high up. I'm thinking somewhere between like a third to a halfway up the screen, something like that. And maybe full screen if you can charge it for a while. I don't know, 'cause Kirby doesn't skip leg day and starts going crazy. I don't know. I just make videos. Lastly, and the part that makes me the happiest, this specifically leaving Kirby in the air is really nice for Parasol Dive. This being a Kirby ability in a Kirby game in the last 15 Kirby years, I figure this would have invincibility on the way up, only going away once Kirby does that cute little pose I was talking about. So you do Parasol Pogo, deal multiple hits of small damage on the way up, blah blah, Kirby years, blah blah blah, get hit, free Parasol Dive. Assuming this all happens quickly enough too, you could probably fit an extra 2 of the pogo sticks in there before you're back to taking damage. It so neatly fixes Parasol's glaring issue without making it too crazy, borrowing from previous games or nullifying what's currently so good about it. If we're feeling real cheeky, then hey, maybe you can use this move in the air too. I don't know, I just make videos. Parasol already has half of what makes Cutter good, a great catch attack, and with this, I think Parasol could have a shot of seeing some minor use in a not boss rush setting. Ultimately though, how quickly you can get Jet or Fire back after using Cutter is actually a pretty big part of why it's also so good. Cutter is a basic ability that you can just find anywhere, Parasol not so much. But if nothing else, this would give it a huge boost in the arena and the true arena rankings. Last I checked, it was the 5th worst in a game full of abilities with insanely high potential. As a fan of perfect copy abilities like Parasol, and only Parasol, it always makes me very, very sad how bad Parasol is in one of my favorite games of the series. I don't know how much better this would make Parasol, but it's a buff I'd seriously appreciate. Speaking of things I'd seriously appreciate though, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't. A lot of people who think they actually haven't, so if you could double check at the very least, that'd be super great for me too. If you're not sure that I'm quite the right channel for you just yet, totally fine. I'm not your mom, I can't tell you to eat your vegetables, subscribe to the YouTube channel. But if you like what you see, any help for Pup would be appreciated. I am a one-pup show around here. I'm always working to make these videos as good as I possibly can. So any support, subscribing to the channel, liking the video, leaving a comment, maybe you can tell me what your favorite change that I made to an ability was. They would all really mean a lot to me, and thank you. Anyway. Parasol may be my favorite ability, but at least that one is actually good. Well, it's not good all of the time if the last probably too many minutes are anything to go by, but most of the time, Cupid has an ability I really like, and in its 2 appearances, it's just straight up terrible. Granted, I don't like it nearly as much as Squeak Squad. They made it a whole lot slower and way less fun, so I'm not gonna harp on that one too much. But in Amazing Mirror, Cupid is a seriously fun ability, and I always wished it would somehow, some way, find any possible manner to be viable. Sadly, it just wasn't meant to be, but hey, I'm up to the task of making it better. See, similar to a game like Superstar, Amazing Mirror has these ability essences. Ugh, that name makes no sense. These ability pedestals throughout the game. In particular, in these rest areas that link back to the main hub and immediately before boss fights. These both can serve a purpose for what I want to do with Cupid, but for now, I want to highlight the room immediately before you fight one of the most brutal boss fights in the whole game, Mega Titan. Before you fight him, you're given one of 3 abilities: Bomb, Cutter, and, of course, Cupid. Speedrunners just use Wheel and make a joke out of the fight, but on the off chance that you lose Wheel beforehand, Cutter is a pretty great backup strat. Barely loses you any time. Bomb is worse, but at least from a casual perspective, you can hurl bombs from a safe distance and not get hit by the Mega Titan's unpredictable, metallic, murderous hand. Bad for our case, but hey, it's good for somebody. There is one person out there in the world that would pick Bomb, right? Cupid, I guess, is there for the challenge, but good golly gosh, does this ability make you want to give up? Try as you might, there is no easy way to do this fight. You'll eventually see the best thing that I came up with, but compared to Cutter and Wheel, heck, even Bomb, it's painfully slow. But hey, you're given Cupid for free, and its movement in the air is actually quite fast. It's why I find the ability so fun and all. So let's keep that movement the same, but buff the worst part of Cupid's kit, that arrow. Specifically, the move that makes Archer so good and Cupid so... Cupid. It's Charged Arrow Firing Attack. Now, unlike Archer, which fires a crazy strong, super spammable, turn your brain off and win arrow, Cupid just fires 3 of its regular arrows at once. The regular arrows, as you can see from the footage, are absolutely horrible, so having 3 of them is regularly horrible. Wow! So giving these a damage boost is mandatory. The logic of GBA Kirby is, for the most part, multi-hit weak attacks or single-hit strong attacks. The Cupid can be mobile and strong because its attack is so slow. So is that the crazy boost I came up with in my head? Give Cupid a damage boost because I'm too big-brained to be creative? You don't have to be such a meanie pants about it. Specifically, I like stronger arrows, but they have to feel stronger, right? So my proposition is to also increase the pushback of each individual arrow. By how much, you may ask? Let me put it this way. Once you enter the boss arena and get all 3 of these arrow suckers charged, so from around, let's say, this distance, you have just enough pushback to knock the Mega Titan into the electric wall. Then, when you knock the Mega Titan down, you can actually reliably knock him into the wall a 2nd, 3rd, and guess what? 4th time. The final phase would also be way less annoying, given the damage boost that we gave Cupid earlier. In a larger speedrunning context, I don't think this would actually help Cupid very much. The Wheel is too fast to really give it use in levels. It's in the awkward middle spot, where it's not really common, but also not rare either. And the only fight where pushback and single hit damage really matters is, of course, Mega Titan. Dark Mind kinda too, I guess, but I don't want Cupid out damaging UFO. Well, okay, I do, but I'm trying to be boring. I'm trying to keep things balanced around here. Teehee. That said, despite how good Wheel is versus Mega Titan, I can kinda picture Cupid being better with these buffs. It absolutely doesn't break the fight by any means either, at least from any perspective beyond speedrunning. And who knows, maybe you don't soft reset after so you can keep Cupid for some sick movement. The wheel is actually less rare than you'd expect, and there are routes like Mustard Mountain where you get your replacement ability, burning in this case, really quickly after some vertical movement of movementicity where Cupid excels the most. I bring that last part up mostly so I can showcase how easy this part is to speed through with Cupid compared to Wheel, but regardless, I'm just saying give Cupid a good Mega Titan fight, and I really think we could see some use out of it beyond, well, nothing. And that's good, I think. Can I make a confession? A pup-fession, if you will? Yeah, you thought I got that all out of my system already. Nope. Anyway, I am not the biggest fan of Ranger. It's not bad or anything, but it always felt really slow and clunky to me. Like I was fighting an uphill battle trying to keep myself moving while also using an ability that's best used when you're standing still. I'm not saying I need to be going fire or tornado levels of fast, but I don't know, even like normal Kirby fast would kind of be appreciated, you know? Given that I wanted to buff a Forgotten Land ability, and Ranger is one of the few with, let's be honest here, nothing to do outside of what is mandatory in a category like all Waddle Dees, it was the perfect fit. Just because I don't like it very much doesn't mean that it deserves to be bad. So I put on the old puppy thinking cap and went to work. What I came up with, well, not perfect, doesn't overlap with anything else in the video, and at least fits with the long-range style of Ranger. See, throughout Forgotten Land, you need to rescue a certain amount of Waddle Dees to progress through the game. You don't need all of them, so some are left to suffer. But if you don't like the idea of a Waddle Dee being a Suffer Dee, then you can run categories like all Waddle Dees instead. It's any percent, but you rescue all the Waddle Dees. It's completely different. And while there are several missions spread throughout the game that unlock you Waddle Dees, every level has a set amount of them that are trapped in cages. Depending on the Waddle Dee, they can take kind of a long time to free. They're worth every second, I'm not saying they're not, but the act of needing to find their cage and free them via the deadliest known force in the entire galaxy, physical contact, can add up in terms of time. The old speedrun standard. Ranger's buff would be to bypass that part entirely and blow open the cages from a safe distance. Whether or not this would require some kind of charge or upgrade or any kind of balancing act, that's kind of hard to say. A lot of these buffs on paper sound overpowered, but are really just playing catch up compared to what actually makes abilities good in their respective games. I don't think allowing Ranger to break open cages would break the game, but it would save time when you actually do use it. There are a decent amount of puzzles that require Ranger, and as it stands, most of them are faster to clear with Bandana D or something, compared to Ranger. I'd hate to steal the spotlight from our boy, but that's what happens when you have a gun, I guess. There is not much else to say on this one. The time saves would be cool, like shooting through prison cages or something to snipe Waddle Dee cages. Maybe we could include treasure chests too, just spicing things up. Either way, the nature of Forgotten Land makes it so that, things are simple. Me giving it more moves or more attributes, etc. would go against what Forgotten Land kinda goes for. With the buff that we gave it though, it still winds up being a very nice complement to Drill. One is great for getting up close, doing damage, and being mobile, while one is good for utility and ease of use from a safe distance. Basically, one is super cool and one is Ranger. Ayo! When thinking of ideas for this video, I knew I had to include Kirby's Adventure. And not just because I love the game, I do really love the game, but because the ability balance in this is probably the worst of the series. Yeah, obviously Tornado is OP and all, but the list of good abilities, kinda ends at Tornado. The wheel is okay, ball is almost good, the high jump is maybe the closest to being good out of any ability. I guess stone and UFO are good if you allow glitches. That's kind of it, until you get, obviously, to Tornado, where it's just completely broken. With that in mind, how do I make another ability good? And how do you make it good in a way that fits Kirby's adventure? Yeah, I think what I came up with is pretty insane, but if you factor it being adventure, I think it works. I chose Needle because, I'm gonna be frank here, I really like Needle, but the first idea I had was to boost Needle's damage, to help it against bosses, since it's never gonna be used for movement, right? The problem with this approach is that, even if I just make it one-shot everything, it won't be faster enough compared to Tornado to make it worth taking over that. Glitched UFO is more so worth it for the insane boost to the movement, not so much the damage. Although that damage is pretty nice. So it would have to be movement related, even though Needle by design is meant to be an offensive ability with defensive merit. This was going to be tough, and for a while, I thought about giving up on Needle and just going with something else instead. But the Needle fan in me never faltered, and in my darkest hour, it hit me. The Kirby's Adventure actually does have some abilities with invulnerability in their startup. You'd never guess, but one of them, yeah, sure is Tornado. Whoa, wow, holy moly smokes. But for Needle, I wanted to go a step further. Since it's so defensive, to ensure that you don't take damage, Kirby's entire hitbox for the startup is removed. Star Allies pre-patch ESP style, you know? Now, Needle will never get hit once you tap that button, and there's no other utility you get from this. It's not like Kirby's Adventure is a game that lets you clip through walls. Oh. Yes, I am effectively creating a glitch to make Needle better in Kirby's Adventure. The idea is you normally need setups to clip through walls, ceilings, and floors. All three of those things are the same in my head, thank you, Kirby's Adventure. But with Needle, you can effectively do all three, even the ceiling, with some practice. This wouldn't matter so much for things like the 2-3 or Ice Cream Island 3 setup, I actually recorded this one, running over a single tile space and clipping into the wall that way. But for some of the more frame-perfect setups, this would certainly be easier and faster. I'm not sure how you would specifically clip into ceilings and walls and not floors, but Adventure is programmed with duct tape and a prayer as it is, so I'm sure it could happen. To me, the funniest thing about this is that, even if you take this logic and apply it to other abilities like Needle, such as Spark and Freeze, it's still better than them. And Needle has the best speed and the least lag of its kind, so you'd want Needle over them no matter what. The only issue would be a place where you can actually find Needle, but I figure this setup would open up a lot more opportunities than the glitches that we currently have. There is also the issue of whether or not this would count as a major glitch. I kinda think it would, and while this certainly gives it a niche over Tornado, I'm not sure I could say the same about glitched UFO. That said, if we let it glitch into slopes, stone percent could be replaced by needle percent, so if it's easier, we can leave it there. All of this being said, having to think of a way to make an ability better than KA Tornado is one of the reasons why I enjoy coming up with ideas that are more complicated than just damage go brrrr. Quick kills are fun, but you can do so much more if you can get that creativity schmoving. Although I think I would accept one-shotting every enemy in the game just this once, given how bad Needle is here. Seriously, just look at the footage that I got with Needle. How did they think making Needle this small was okay? You know, I was actually thinking about increasing its range for the heck of it, but Nightmare and Dreamland kind of beat me to the punch there. I really did have to force myself to be creative here, didn't I? Whew. Out of any copy ability that I've ever talked about in the history of history, the one I get the most people telling me that I'm wrong about is Mirror. It's one of the most popular abilities in the series, having even won the first of the Battle Royale popularity polls. I'm not sure why we haven't seen it since Battle Royale, but hey, baby steps, I guess. People really like Mirror, and unfortunately, it's really bad. It's been in 4 games, and in 3 of them, it's basically got nothing to do, and the other one is Battle Royale, where it can't even be used in the single player, and isn't bomb in the multiplayer, so, yikes. Yeah, I could have picked any of the 4 games here for Mirror, but I chose KSSU because, well, I'm me. Of course I'd pick it. But it was my best option of the 4. What would my workaround be for Battle Royale? Go back in time and make them add it as a not DLC? Yeah, sure thing. But at the same time, by the time I got to this point of the video, my options for how to buff it were pretty limited. I'm trying to not have any repeat ideas here, with all of these being unique changes to make abilities better. So for Mirror, I decided when you inhale a mirror, you get Parasol. That's my buff. What? That's it. That's the buff. That said, I guess you could still mix for a Mirror, so let's give it a second buff. Why the heck not? This was hard, since without a new move entirely, fixing Mirror kinda isn't possible. I know, Mirror's swipe attack does decent damage against bosses, the dash attack and multi-hit if it's spaced right, but it's just not enough. It's middle of the road at best, and for anything else, it just doesn't work. Even a little time save that you can get in the original Kirby Superstar if you fail to mix or lose an ability just doesn't work in Ultra. They actually nerfed it. Excuse me? Balance is Hal's passion. While mulling this all over in my head, I decided to at least get a start on the category that I'd be buffing Mirror in. This was simple enough. We haven't covered a 100% category yet, and Mirror can, in theory, be used in multiple hundo modes. But which one is gonna get the good stuff? Ultimately, to correct the sins against Mirror, the nerfs, I went with Great Cave Offensive. So now, all I needed was a buff to give Mirror in GCO 100%. And for what it's worth, movement isn't quite as big of an issue, since even though it's less effective than Jet now compared to the original, Wheelie Rider is still really good for it in Ultra. So I didn't have to buff movement speed and could keep my originality flowing. Yay! I've been building up to what this buff actually would be for Mirror, but in reality, I just really didn't know how to buff Mirror. But with GCO in mind, I ultimately came up with this. And let me know when it clicks what I decided to do, okay? Mirror's dash attack, splitting Kirby into 2 and shooting forward, just backward, on each side. Wouldn't it be great if this attack could do more than damage enemies? Aside from the computer virus, it's not all that good against the bosses here for GCO, so I don't think we could go with that. Standard enemies usually die to the standard swish-wash thing that Mirror has, so we're out of luck there too. About the only thing that I can think of that we would use it for would be chests. Correct. The buff that I chose for Mirror is being able to collect items in general during the dash attack. For treasure chests, it'd be as simple as pressing or holding up while doing the dash attack and touching the chest. For food and such, simply touching it would be enough, and that's not a real big deal anyway. If anything, this would kind of be like what I did for Needle in Adventure, but instead of glitching the game like crazy, because Adventure itself is just crazy, this is intentional and is still crazy for collecting chests. There are so many treasures in GCO that are locked behind puzzles or walls or some form of obstacle that you have to go through. It would save a really good time not having to deal with those, and I think if you look creatively enough, you'll find a lot of areas where Mirror's newfound item collecting abilities can save time. As it stands, Mirror's dash attack is so close to actually being a good move. It can multi-hit bosses, it can hit switches despite not being able to collect chests, for some reason. And because it's a safe move, it's also a spammable one. I could have just focused on making the dash attack a fully functional move and leave it there, but giving it one final tool that it would need to be truly great felt a lot better to me. Just imagine a world where the meta for Great Cave Offensive 100% in Superstar Ultra, not the OG, is Mirror plus Wheelie Rider. The bosses may take some extra time compared to Jet, but the time saves in the levels would go crazy. Alternatively, you find Jet before 2 of the boss fights, so just adding in mirror enemies in the, I don't know, minecart sections or something, that would work too. It's kind of a second buff I'm giving Mirror, but honestly, it's so historically bad, I think this is okay. The one problem with this buff is that it doesn't really do much of anything for a Mirror outside of Great Cave Hundo. For the modes like Spring Breeze that are really no different compared to any percent, you just straight up get nothing. Dynablade doesn't have any unlockables that require a mirror, and for Milky Way Wishes, you still want to pick a better ability as soon as you can, right away. For any boss rush mode too, you'll want to pick Stone or, more realistically here, Hammer. Oh, but what about the multiplayer where you pick the Wheelie Rider? Alright, fine, Wheelie Rider is better than Hammer, but it's not Mirror, okay? It really would just be GCO, but I think that's okay. There's nothing wrong with giving a specific mode some unique flair in terms of the abilities you use, right? As it stands, I kind of wish more modes in the speedrun had unique abilities. Like use Cutter for a little while and Revenge of the King. Isn't that so cool? With that though, I think I can take off my creativity cap for now. That's with a C, by the way, not a K like what I do with Claire. That's important for the lore, so make sure you write it down. Copy abilities are what make Kirby so cool, and I really hope that we get to see more creative ones in the future. Something segue. If you want to be creative, then subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, everything I was saying before you. If you would like to go the extra mile, please consider becoming a pup train on Patreon or join as a mempup on YouTube for nifty perks, including early access to all videos. Special thanks to my head-patting, fluffle fan pup-trins and mempups, Freakish Uproar, Lydia Scribe, Nightfall, and Chris. I love you all! Just like I love Parasol, which I talked about in this video! Wow! Bye!